So who's heard of Fabric Ventures? A couple of people, that's good. I am one of the co-founders and chairman of the firm. We've sort of backed, we're a bunch of builders basically who backed build companies over all three ways of the web, and actually backed companies sort of up and down the stack over the years. Everything from obviously Bitcoin, Bitstamp, Abra, Circle, the DAO, Ethereum, Ramp, so Rare, Polkadot, a whole bunch of different projects. So that's what we do. We're like 25 people, mainly distributed across Europe, and we're deploying everything from 100K checks to 10 million, from a few hundred millions in commitments. So I'm forcing you to listen to me just for 2 seconds, but I just wanted to sort of tell you a quick story, my personal story with respect to kind of Web3, in part because it kind of began in terms of Web3 just over a decade ago for myself, and that was when I was first properly took a look into kind of Bitcoin and then into other technologies and capabilities from there. But really, if you go back further, I actually had first visited the United States, that kind of quintessence of capitalism, back in 1979, and I first visited the Soviet Union back in 1987, and seeing this kind of battle between the profit incentive and the power of people, should we say. And then when I went into work, I also saw the power of mutualism, of kind of employee ownership of ventures. I actually tried to put that into practice somewhat in some of my first, my second startup. And so when I was introduced to first Bitcoin and then ran into people prognosticating on the power of DAOs, these decentralized autonomous organizations, the ability to coordinate people natively, with the carrot and the stick, that my imagination was suddenly sparked. And so the question is could we perhaps have some combination of both through the power of this new technology? And the truth is, I think 10 years into the Web3 stack, we might be just about getting there. I think, obviously we've had a kind of a tricky year. I'm not going to go back into 2022. People are going to talk about it on the panels. But we've had incredible progress, obviously, recently, with the merge, and I think a lot of interoperability work going on. We've got, if you look at the funding rates, you look at the value in that has been created within the crypto-verse, let's call it that. If you look at the number of users, you're looking at a growth rate that compounded over 10 years, which is 3 or 4 times as high as the kind of threshold for venture capital investing. So, and that's not on average. So this is an incredibly potent area of innovation. And we've got some interesting kind of tailwinds at our backs now. Whether we talk about the banking crisis, regional banks in the US and beyond, the combination of AI and Web3, I think that was actually what my second startup was about. I think we're going to see Web3 come to the rescue of AI in some respects. And I think the ongoing social media crisis, this is all stuff that is grist to our mill as protagonists in Web3. And I think we're at a crucial juncture in terms of regulation as well. I have a colleague on the Near Foundation Council, where I was part of the co-founding team, Sheila Warren, who's tells me that GFSA over here in Japan is incredibly forward-looking and humble in their approach to regulation, something we're not yet seeing in the US, but we can be optimistic about it. But we are seeing potential for firms moving to Europe, which we're happy to, although we invest globally, we're happy to help them do that because of those challenges. And, it's all still early, but, it's all still to be won. It's still early, and if you look at some of the stats, and there's a few people have tried to do this, but I think there are different ways of kind of framing it, but I think we're still stuck somewhere about 1995 in the internet years in terms of the progress of Web3. That's pretty early, and it just happens to be actually the year that this guy here started his first startup. So we came at Phaver to this space because of that, societal level promise that you have, because of the fact that was underpinned not just by something that was about a world casino, but it in fact was a movement towards, a world computer. We're seeing tremendous progress towards building that stack. We've seen, I think, importantly, because there's no point in having just a computer but no way of making sure people use it and to some benefit, incredible experimentation around new business models. And the level of transactions now in Web3 that can be attributed to gaming, arguably about 20 times the level of those attributed to DeFi. And why is that important? It's because gamification is kind of a code word for token economics, in my view. It's the petri dish for innovation around that, and it's going to be business models which I think are going to help create all sorts of new applications. My favorite one being DeSci. It's actually, let's just say, the definition of a life or death issue for people, but many others as well around social media and so forth, which can be critical for our emotional well-being. So we're getting there, and I've heard chatting around to people this last couple of days, people working on how to apply account abstraction in combination with ZK technology to greater levels of usability and privacy, how to move from stable coins to stable yield, how to look at issues like credit insurance. I think the level of innovation everyone would agree is truly incredible. And so I think it's fantastic to convene everybody here. Fantastic to think extremely positively about what the next 10 years can hold for us, and hear from people who are really at the front line. I get too caught up in the back office of building a firm to back builders like you folks here and others. So it's great to be here amongst you and having a good chat. So thank you for joining us. Thank you again to CoinPost, to Huobi Ventures, to Selini Capital, to NEAR, our friends at NEAR. And without further ado, I'll pass over to our first panel, who are just going to come up right now. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Wow, these are far apart. Let's. All right, my name is Bradley. Is it just me, or does this sound really bad? Everything sounds good? Okay. It's just my voice then. All right, welcome to Phaver Ventures side event. We have a few good panels for you tonight, so I hope you're stoked. I hope you got some food and drinks, and looking forward to the discussion tonight. I'm going to let these guys introduce themselves.
I think we're waiting for another microphone, but we can kick off. Hi, I'm Jordi. I'm the founder of Selini Capital. We're kind of active across trading, short-term, DeFi, ventures, across the whole space. About leadership, because we care about which direction the space is going into, and we'll have a chance to talk about some ideas. And yeah, I'm happy to be joined by Darryl.
Hi, my name is Darryl. I'm one of the co-founders of Tangent, which is a newly formed angel investment collective based out of Singapore. So we do a combination of venture, angel-related investing, as well as liquid strategies. On-chain, off-chain, as supposedly degen as it gets.
All right, so if you were expecting to see Lucas from Bangladesh here tonight, sorry to disappoint you. He couldn't quite make it, so it's me for the first three panels. But I got his questions, so this is going to be a mix of his questions and my questions. This first one is definitely his. What the fuck happened in 2022?
I mean, we seem to be in like the flip of 2022, because 2022 was just down, and now we're in reverse. I think this is the first conference, so we haven't had a dump. Like the price has actually survived through an actual legitimate conference, so it's good to see. Things do feel very different than last year. Obviously, one of the things that we realized is that the crypto space is still changing, it's still evolving really fast. So things that we think are like the institutional big players, they can just disappear overnight. So Luna happened, people had never seen that before. Top 10 coin just disappeared. FTX, top 3 exchange gone. we're still seeing some of that. Like OpenSea, people thought it was just done. They had taken over the whole market, and it seems like it's not that hard to displace any weakness. Like anyone who's showing any weakness in their business model, or any founders who are not doing things properly can kind of get blown out. So it's exciting, but it was a frightening year. Yeah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the word new paradigm has been thrown around a lot. There's a joke, of course, but this may be a new paradigm with the price being up only for the last 4 months. But I think I read a tweet recently on one of the main CT accounts was sharing it, and he said a very salient point, which is if you do everything that you didn't do in 2022 in 2023, chances are you'll probably be better off and make more money this year. So just everything you avoided in 2022, maybe try and do it in 2023. That's potentially something to take note of. But no, I think in general 2022, we just bore the brunt of the excess unwind that happened in 21. Right, you had ridiculous 100x, some even 1000x upswings that eventually rolled over. You had FTX, which is one of the, I think it came up in like 2018, 2019, grew to a enormous size, had 1 or 2 missteps, throw in a bit of fraud, throw in a bit of drama, and then it just rolls over. So the punishment from that, or the contagion from that, was, probably to be expected, maybe a bit worse than people expected, with the number of building blocks that topple over one by one. But I think that is more or less done. And since the start of the year, we've really sort of healed wounds. And as time goes on, I think time can heal all wounds in crypto, unless BTC or ETH gets hacked. And that's kind of over.
So that's one takeaway from 2022. To do the opposite this year, and you might do well. How about you, Jordi? Any takeaways from 2022? Actionable takeaways?
I mean, I always focus on what's real and what's not real. That's my general attention. And, the tide came in, water flushed a lot of sand castles out. What's really exciting to me is that beyond the DAO now, we've seen that, there is demand that will sustain through, the worst possible environment from governments, from even just, we can't self-police. That's pretty evident. So the incentives have to self-police us. We can't rely on just saying we'll take care of regulating ourselves. That's clearly not going to happen. What's obviously exciting right now is there is proof in my mind. Now we're done. We've proven that there is demand for digital assets. The world is moving in this direction. We bounced back a lot faster than we thought it was possible. We thought it was going to be like a 10-year issue. And to be fair, a lot of big institutions probably won't touch anything crypto related for a while, and we are seeing banks create more problems. But the fact that despite everything else, we're still going strong, I think is very bullish for the future.
Darryl, any other takeaways you want to mention?
Well, I guess one thing to note of this market is there's been a lot of contention on this concept of it's been a very PvP market for really the whole year, meaning that you're consistently trying to outcompete the person opposite you, which is in general just the market. And I think while that works pretty well in sort of declining or defensive markets, I think it's going to catch a lot of people by surprise if we move structurally into a proper bull market. I think the PTSD that saved you last year would probably hurt you quite a lot in terms of preventing you from achieving unrealized gains in the new bull market. So I think that's a structural mindset change that many will realize too late, basically, if we have a new bull market. Not saying that we will get one.
That's an interesting point because I think with SBF, you expect exchanges or just any crypto company to be taking risks and maybe to be somewhat reckless, but I think most people don't expect it to be a complete scam or complete sham, completely empty on the inside. Does that change how you evaluate investments going forward, potential investments, or like you said, do you think that actually now is the time to be more aggressive rather than more cautious?
I mean, we have to reevaluate everything just from the ground up, which is good. It's creating a lot of opportunities where traditional markets don't have this ability to find something new. I think with exchanges specifically, I don't know what the hell would still happen at FTX. I think it was just too much drugs. That's my personal view of the situation, because it's not like they went broke. Like the guys, the liquidators, they're just every month saying, oh, we found an extra 500 million over here in some wallet that nobody tagged properly. So it's not like they lost all the money or they spent all of it. Obviously there was some of that, but I think it was just, kids that were too young to be handling too much money and maybe were kind of pushing themselves with, you do have a lot of pressure in crypto. There's a lot of smart people. If you're coming out of like an environment with universities where people doing a lot of Adderall, a lot of drugs, and then you just kind of go through with that mindset, oh, I need to outperform and just keep popping pills, or I think SBI had like a patch that just kept kind of pumping in with juice. That can go wrong. So we're seeing a lot of that. But, the other thing that I think we still haven't figured out is crypto is both like Wall Street and it's also Las Vegas at the same time, right? Like you have people who just want to go put it all on like number 14 at the roulette table, and then you have kind of more serious like investors wanting to buy like the equivalent of Apple stock or what they think that is. And these things sometimes like, you don't have that in the real world. Like it's very separated out. And with crypto exchanges, sometimes it's all blended into one. And that changes both like who's going to succeed and who's targeting different markets. I do think we start to reach the point where we'll have different type of exchanges for different types of investors. I think we'll have more segmentation.
Yeah, I mean, in general, what I learned from FTX was we completely overhauled our operational security in terms of exposure to any one particular entity in crypto. Doesn't matter whether it's exchange, it's a wallet, even fiat, for example, or the type of stablecoin that you hold. So after FTX basically taught me that you cannot treat any one entity, no matter how safe it is, as a bank account, then we impose really strict limits. Like, for example, you have not more than 20% exposure on any one centralized exchange, for example. Or if you're trading it, once you've purchased or sold what you need to buy or sell, you would move it off to self-custody. So we still think that self-custody is the safest way to hold things for the long term. But yeah, I think that is the biggest takeaway from FTX. The second one is really about panicking, and you prefer to panic early as to panic late. Because and also you also have to definitely watch the chain, because there were plenty of signs that told you to get out for both Luna and FTX. If you were paying attention, or if you were following people who do Twitter because they post the stuff. So those are the three main takeaways.
Speaking of different types of exchanges and self-custody, let's talk about DEXs. A lot of people after 2022, well, I guess specifically after FTX, saw it as the opportunity for DEXs to steal market share. Are we actually seeing that? And what do you think it really takes for DEXs to win out?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to disagree a little bit. I think that I hate the fact that we need to be panicking and panic early and be in this mindset. And I understand why. Like, the governments haven't really allowed crypto to, like, even Coinbase, which is the most legitimate exchange, you have them getting wealth notice, and they're a public company, and sometimes they say things. There was something that they said about a year ago. okay, so people got scared of Coinbase because Coinbase was saying, in the case of bankruptcy, we might not give you your coins back. And then people thought, well, FTX is safer than that, and obviously that wasn't the case. The good thing about DEX is you can actually make sure that your coins are custodied in a place that no one's taking them. They're on chain, you can look at them, you can see what address they're at. I think people like that. People don't like having to deal with a lot of wallet, security, self-custody. There's too many scams, there's too many people phishing, unsophisticated users. But what I'm seeing with a lot of DEXs, and I think they can succeed, is like social logins, logging with your email, logging in with like a 2FA without having to like do the full MetaMask setup. I think eventually that will be smooth enough and safe enough that some of the DEXs will succeed. Otherwise, I think DEXs are primed for a run. We've already seen, I think the market share has grown from 7 to 13%. 13 is still small, but I think the direction is good. And we just need like really strong teams to build and be backed by the kind of support that centralized exchanges have. Like in Japan and Korea, like we know how the centralized exchanges have done it is go to YouTube and get a bunch of influencers and I don't know if you guys know this like Korean guys who like lose $2 million and Phaver is like supporting them and they're driving a lot of like eyeballs. I don't know if DEXs need to go to that extent where they start having DAOs sponsoring like Legion traders. Hopefully not, but maybe that's the case. Like I said, I think we start differentiating different segments.
Yeah, I think for me, DEXs, the comparison of DEXs and SEXs is not that much a technical one. It's more a question of UI UX as well as security. So I think the problem really lies in terms of DEX adoption is the lack of proper mobile applications that can service your day-to-day traders. Right now, MetaMask's mobile app is just a nightmare to use, and you don't really have an alternative for hardware wallet. As opposed to, for example, if you would trust having 50% of your net worth in Binance, for example, for a short period of time, but you will never do that on a MetaMask hot wallet, just for example. So until we fix the security issues and the mobile UI and UX issues, we can never really see whether the AMM model can compete versus the audible model, because I still think a ton of trading activity is by retail traders, is done on the mobile.
I'm going to throw 3 differences between what you said, sexist. I can't get used to the term sexist, so I'm just going to say centralized exchanges and DEXs. 3 different categories of differences, and I just want to get your opinions on them. So the first is the fees. Obviously, the fees are different. Do you think that's going to make a meaningful difference for users, or they're going to see that it's worth higher fees? The second thing is proof of reserves. Do you think users are that's going to be a distinguishing factor that draws market share? And then the third is Oracle model versus order book model, which you think is going to win out?
I'll start with the proof of reserves. I think in terms of the priority of users, that was pretty low because we hadn't had any drugs since Puerto Rico, and that was like very small in Canada. After FTX, that was number 1. So you saw all the exchanges one by one start releasing proof of reserves. It's obviously not ideal because people don't know what the assets are. They just see they don't know what their liabilities are on the other side. So it's a lot less perfect than a decentralized exchange. I think the advantage is clearly on that side, regardless of what they try to show as their assets. Although Binance did show 65 billion in assets, that's a lot of assets. So maybe their liabilities are 68, but at least there's a lot of money there. So that's good to see. It was a bit worrying seeing that some other ones like Crypto.com, most of their assets are like Shiba. I know Shiba might be big here. I don't want to insult any Shiba owners, but they had $4 billion in Shiba. So that was a bit worrying. In terms of fees, I'm from the poker world and I've seen rate be a big topic of discussion in terms of fees. I do think most crypto exchanges will start getting more fee pressed down because users will get more sophisticated. They'll realize their chance to succeeding and making money are a lot less without good fees. I think also once you have something on a DEX, it's running automatically, the code doesn't need a lot of people to maintain it, you can reduce fees by a small amount. And then you said order book versus Oracle. GMX, which is like the big success of last year and through the bear market was Oracle based. I think order books are more scalable. That's like our research that we've done. So we're more kind of focused on order book access.
Yeah, I think I generally agree on most points. With respect to fees, it's really a race to the bottom. I don't see how, over the long term, your fee differential between your DEXs and your central exchanges don't eventually compress. That's number one. I would say that DEXs have an additional benefit of introducing token utility via fees that can be streamed back to token holders that centralized exchanges probably can't or don't want to do because the cycle is often the business model. So I think that's an added benefit that we haven't really seen come into effect just yet. In terms of proof of reserves, honestly, I don't think it matters that much. Without you introducing proof of liabilities to match proof of reserves, just showing consolidation. The last one, order book versus AMM. I think for price discovery to occur, AMMs will do the job. But for you to have, I guess, extremely deep liquidity and global scale, I still think the order book model is, the best, it's the most scalable.
All right, here's a question I think a lot of people are dying to hear your views on. Narratives. The last few years, one of the big narratives was the alt L1 thesis. Lately, we've been hearing more about L2s and app chains. Do you think it's real? How do you see this narrative unfolding?
People love narratives because they want to know what they can be early at. Obviously, there's Bitcoin ETH, but that's not as 100x as like some new narratives. We've been rotating narratives a lot more frequently than last year. Like there's like a China narrative, there's like a liquid staking narrative. It's been changing like every week. It feels like. I do think the L1 hop around is semi-dead. I think it ended with kind of like the end of last year, and now people want to see like something different. L2s, we're having a lot of L2s. There's like a long list. Arbitrum obviously has been in the headlines a lot. I think ZK is the new narrative that everyone's looking for. I'm not sure if the tank is quite ready for prime time to like really shine. Curious what Darryl thinks. I think narratives-wise, we're always going to have new ones every month now. It's just changing. We've had the gambling narrative, like Rollbit and GameFi narratives. I do think at some point we get games that are actually good and fun to play. At some point, somebody will find that formula. It's going to take a while, but it seems inevitable that will come along. In terms of app chains, I've always been an app chain bull. I think DYDX is going to be the first major example of what might be a successful app chain. It's going to have all these challenges, MEV and all these things, so we're waiting to see like by the end of the year if that happens. But I think the app chains are a cool idea that we're still a little skeptical, but very interested to see.
Yeah, I think L2s, well, all L1s, I think really died with Solana going down alongside FTX. I think that was the nail in the coffin that was coming along throughout really the entire 2022. I do believe that monolithic L1s will have its own space alongside ETH and the relevant L2s. I think the trade-off of greater increased liquidity, lack of fragmentation does draw sufficient benefit and result in sufficient traction going forward. But I also see the value of app chains. I think app chains can work in very specific ways. Ideally, when you need either very, very high throughput, high scalability, or minimal interaction with the blockchain, for example, within Like if let's say you're bringing the user through a new process and 80% of that is off-chain, 20% of it is on-chain, and you want to capture or you want to reduce as much on-chain interaction as possible, you can sort of carve off and spin off your own app chain so that the UX can stay within the application you're building. It can be a game, it can be a decentralized notebook, for example. So there's that. In terms of L2s, that's the most interesting. It's been the most popular as of late. And I still think that it's quite oligopolistic in nature because L2s, eventually you're not, I don't think there's going to be a world where you're going to see 20 different L2s competing with one another over a long time frame. I think you're going to have maybe 3 or 4 of them come out. Right now it's looking like Arbitrum, Optimism, maybe Base from Coinbase, maybe something else, or it could be it. But attention is the most vital thing to keep, to sustain. And you cannot the market is not big enough to have attention split across more than 10 shares, for example. So I think you're going to have a decent amount of attention being focused on L2s, of which Arbitrum, Optimism are contenders, and then your fair share of new L1s. It could be Sui, Aptos, it could be something else that comes up to balance or offer the alternative of one of the big L1s.
Well, let's stay on the topic of narratives, but thinking about, as you mentioned a few different categories that are maybe not quite ready for prime time, or maybe some that are ready for prime time. What do you think are some of the things that are going to drive the next bull market?
I mean, Darryl said this is the opposite year of last year, so it might just be like ETH doing really well. It is true that we've already seen an outperformance in Bitcoin and Ethereum compared to like altcoins, and I saw like Arthur Hayes is expecting a huge alt season, maybe not. I think this year it could just be as simple as, the bull market starts with the big coins and some things pop off here and there. I do think geopolitically it's really interesting right now. We are seeing like the US take a certain stance, and whenever the US does X, we see like there's a lot of countries that don't like the USA, just doing the opposite. So crypto is kind of being caught in this tug of war right now, and obviously Middle East, Russia, China are starting to like allow crypto a lot more. So I think there's certain regions that might be a lot more friendly, and possibly China opening up. Obviously, there are rumors that they might start like mining again soon. That would drive, China's a huge market. That would drive the bull run immediately, I think, if they just start opening up. And there's signs that might happen.
Yeah, so I think for crypto-specific narratives, it's going to be quite. Well, the biggest one recently was Shanghai that just happened that, really structurally improved its value proposition as a store of value. But after that, I don't think there's anything super significant apart from the 2024 Bitcoin halving. What that means to me is the market, without something crypto-specific to focus on, will result all the biggest correlations with equities is going to come back. So I think actually the next quarter or so, it makes a lot of sense to pay attention to macro. And once again, what the Fed is saying, we're going to have a hard soft landing. I think that really for the past month or so hasn't been that relevant to crypto, but it's going to come back in a much stronger force now, given that Shanghai is done. So whether we have an alt season or not, I think is heavily reliant on that. Plus, the most important thing is then new capital coming into crypto. Right now, based on whatever signals that I'm looking at, the answer is still no. So until that changes, it's going to be very difficult for ETH or BTC to reach all-time highs. And if that doesn't happen, then you're really just in this echo chamber, hoping for that new 0 to 1 innovation to go. So it could happen. For example, in 2020, Uniswap started out, the 0 to 1 innovation was liquidity incentives. right? That really kicks off the whole season of DeFi yield farming, and that in turn generated a lot of wealth and a lot of interest that kickstarted the whole I'm in crypto early, I get rich, join me, plus number go up, so more retail money comes in, and then that's how the whole money works. Right now, we don't really have those ingredients to start. It's certainly good with ETH basically coming from where it was at the lows, but I think we need a 0 to 1 innovation to come again. If you ask me to throw a dart, I think it's going to come from gaming, because I just don't see the breakthroughs in, for example, decentralized social media, for example, just yet. NFTs, based on what we're looking at, all the numbers are still declining, so we're not seeing increased NFT activity as of yet as well. So, and at the same time, we knew that in 2020 there was a huge inflow of gaming developers that started building, investing in gaming IP 2 to 3 years ago, and usually it takes about 3 to 4 years for your games to come to life. So we're hoping that at the end of this year, or perhaps going into next year, we have high quality games that can stand alone as a proper game without having to interact with the blockchain. And then you will introduce Web3 tokenomics on top of what they improve the user experience. That's where I think the flywheels for positive feedback get very interesting.
There's one like potential thing in the horizon. It's not near, so like nobody gets excited, but I saw a headline about Hillary Clinton, and Hillary said, even though her husband, a year ago, I was at the FTX conference in the Bahamas, and I saw Bill sitting there with Tony Blair and legitimizing that whole operation. So everything with Clinton's with a grain of salt. Now she's obviously anti-crypto. She's saying, crypto is going to be a threat to the dollar, the US dollar. And I think one potential avenue for crypto that I see just out of the blue creating a 0 to 1 moment you talked about is, there is this weakness of the narrative of the dollar when you talk about memes and the meme of the reserve currency being a flight to safety. This is under threat like it's never been in our lifetimes right now. And crypto is like an alternative. And especially as we've seen like CBDCs, like all the central banks are starting to like do digital currencies, it will put in like, obviously other people in this room already know about crypto and understand it, but for the normies who live in like random countries, if their CBDC starts becoming enforced and popular, they'll start opening their mind and thinking about money in a different way than coins and dollars that they're used to. And crypto provides like it's like an international CBDC. It's not based on any one country. And that could be a very strong narrative that's the one I'm most excited about. I think we're still maybe like a year or two away. We need to see the CBDC come in, and then this will be like the anti-CBDC thesis. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, that would definitely be a 0 to 1 kind of change. Unfortunately, we're running out of time, so I'm going to make this the last question, and it's a really personal question because I am the most mid-curve of all the mid-curves. So, I think everyone knows the meme, the left side of the bell curve, the right side of the bell curve. Either side is great, but you don't want to be in the middle. How can I either get a lot smarter, preferably, or if I have to, get a lot dumber?
Yeah, I think being in the middle in crypto we've realized is a problem, and I've been very guilty of mid-curving a bunch of stuff. It's so hard to be in the right curve. You have to listen to 10 podcasts a week, 2x speed read every blog and thing coming out. It's very exhausting. Other people start out-promoting you just by buying the dumbest rock kind of coin that there is. I think my advice for not mid-curving is just realize that it's sometimes evident if you're late to the party, the price is already moved. Just try to avoid buying after it's already done. And if you're seeing a headline, this is the thing that annoys me with crypto that we're in paralytic times. You see a headline and you think nobody knows about it, and somebody PWF Labs invested 15 million in XYZ company, and then people just go and buy it as if there's some new information that should make you bullish. I think some of this like mid-curving needs to stop. Like that's probably a bad thing that there's more tokens out. It's not a good thing that somebody invested. It still works. Like we saw this last year. Like when it was a headline, pre-arrows did a round of $1 billion. I mean, they invested at a 30%, 40% discount. So the price that you're seeing is 40% above them, and now you want to pump it up even more. That's the one thing that mid-curvers need to avoid, I think.
I think the biggest thing to avoid being a maker is basically to counter-trade your own emotions. I think that has been a lesson that I've reflected on a lot whenever I have made curve something or I successfully managed to escape the mid curve. And a lot of times the initial emotions I felt were probably going with the crowd. And so being mindful of that is pretty important. But I think the larger picture is you don't have to necessarily try and 50 IQ or 150 IQ of particular point. I think if you can nail the broader market beta and market positioning of like a structural change, I think that is far more important. For example, if you flip long in January, you would be buying like 1.2K or 1.3K, and you can literally just close your laptop, go away, and not do anything in the 50 or 10 IQ part of the camp, and come back and be like, up 50-60% in 4 months, right? Not doing any work whatsoever. Obviously, that doesn't always play out that way, but I think nailing the moves is so much more important for the general market. It's so much more important than trying to find specific points and deciding, okay, is it too late to buy, or is it too early to buy, etc., etc. But chances are, if you are looking at a specific point, a heuristic that I've used and found more success with is if you feel like you're late to the party, chances are you are.
Great advice for us all. Thank you guys for your time. Let's give our panelists a hand. All right, welcome guys. Everyone situated, have enough space. It's a long panel, but I'm sure everyone can see everyone. And yes, you're sitting in the same order as the slide, which is great.
Trying to make it easy.
All right, let's just go down the line then. Please introduce yourselves, and we're talking about the future of digital identity, so what your project is and what the relevance to digital identity is.
Yeah, since I'm holding the only microphone, I can probably start. So hey everyone, my name is Joonatan. I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders of Phaver. We're the gateway to Web3 social, which means that we are aiming to really solve that kind of next billion people onboarding issue for socials by creating a good user experience and also integrating multiple protocols. So we are right now the biggest Lens protocol and recently rolled out CyberConnect and plan to roll out new protocols still this year as well. And on top of that, we've identified that the next big challenge for social is really going to be the identity part, where you need to separate the bots and the fakes and the farmers from the real high-quality users. And for that, we are now building what we call a Phaver cred, so your credibility score based on your wallet assets. That's kind of the first step towards also trying to prepare for the horde of AI posting that's going to be coming, and essentially also making content meaningless. So you really need to figure out the identity and the reputation part. Unlike Twitter, who kind of took 2 steps back on that recently.
Hey everyone, so Suji, founder of Mass Network. So being around since 2017, we're probably the OG Web3 social network project. In the past 5 years, we've been developing and incubating, and now we start to helping by partnership and investing, and also granting new projects about social network. So one thing we noticed particularly is like a lot of people want to be decentralized, want to just jump into the decentralized social network with the decentralized ID, but they just kind of stuck in the or two. Especially, let's see, Twitter or Instagram, Facebook, right? So one thing particularly we build is we build a bridge between Web 2 and Web 3. So you can stay on Twitter, Facebook, while simultaneously have your social graph transfer into whatever platform or protocol you choose. So we are backing CyberConnect, we're backing Lens, probably going to be other competitors. But I think in the long run, we just compete with Twitter, not just compete each other. And that from that perspective, I think everyone will need a decentralized identity. And this thing is not going to be a very geeky thing. It's not going to be very dirty. You have to be very cute. You have to be very kawaii, like your anime girlfriend, your anime pet. They have to be grow up with you together for the next 20 years, and one day your anime pet may grow a soul, become a soul token. That's our approach. We think it's a long-term work. It's not going to be magically solved like 1 10 hours. Okay, that's our story.
Yeah. So I'm Miguel. I work at the WorldCoin. We're building World ID, which is a really simple way to tell humans from not humans, everything else. This was really important even before with airdrops, NFTs, and all these issues in Web3, and it's now even with all these AI tools becoming more and more important. So we're building this really simple tool that lets people get onboarded as humans, and we are actually going on the streets on dozens of countries, and it's going out there, onboarding people, teaching them what crypto is, giving them their first crypto, and registering them as super system humans. Now that we have kind of solved that in a way, as we continue to expand that, we're also turning our eyes into more a more complete idea of identity. So not only a binary, are you a human or not, in an anonymous way, but also how can we maintain this anonymity and maintain what we see as proofs. So with this framework, how can we add more parts of what identity is online to all this protocol in order to make a solution that everyone can use?
Yeah, hi everybody. For those of us who didn't catch the intro, I'm Richard from Fabric, co-founder and chairman there. And so I have been around in this field long enough to remember the meme, on the internet, nobody knows you are a dog. And that was not just pre sort of Facebook, but pre any kind of name claiming going on, and it sort of created a world where everybody was not necessarily that nice to each other at that point in time. And I guess that's where it was, and the internet was arguably much less useful than it has already become. And I guess I'd like to emphasize my view, and picking up on Joonatan's point about the importance of identity in the context of effective communities, which will remind us of that's arguably the superpower of Web3, and the importance of identity. If, as he put it, you're going to make meaning from content. We've gone from kind of borderless and boundless abundance of information, and to an abundance of not just opinion but expertise, so-called. And we need to understand where that has come from. Otherwise, we're going to be fucked, basically. So it's super important, but going back to what I've observed over the decades about how we get the nut cracked, I think that we're going to get increasingly used to and comfortable with biometrics forming part of the way we prove who we are. I saw a presentation at the ZK Summit in Portugal the other day about a kind of proof of person box that you might want to hop in to be able to make the link between yourself and the piece of content you're creating. I think we're going to do that on our phones, with perhaps, with iris scanning, with a bunch of different things. We're going to get over that. But I think the thing that is tricky and maybe I think is important for people to focus on is there needs to be a use case. I think trying to solve the identity problem is trying to solve the wrong problem. Let's not say that there's great firms here, but identity is central to the very intrinsic social nature of Web3, and
If we're going to solve it, though, we need to work out what, for example, if you want to collect phone numbers like Zuckerberg did at Harvard, that's what you do, and you accidentally build a social platform and you accidentally create Facebook login. You don't start by creating Facebook login. So that's my thought for the moment. Get crack on the rest of the panel.
Yeah, I want to ask, because I think for those of us in the space, it may be obvious, like, oh yeah, digital identity, that is a huge problem. But I think it doesn't come naturally, or it's not that obvious to a lot of people who don't spend much time thinking about it. They think, oh, like Facebook got lame, so now I'm on Instagram. Yeah, I'm not too happy with my life, but log into Instagram every day. So I want to ask what you think the specific problems are with digital identity that you're trying to solve, but I want to come at it from maybe a slightly more specific angle of, technology is advancing so rapidly, way more rapidly than our brains evolve. In terms of our evolution or our understanding of community, we're still probably thousands or tens of thousands of years ago. So what do you think are the assumptions that people bring from the physical world, or even back in the days when we lived in very small communities? What are the instinctive assumptions that people are bringing onto the internet that are causing a lot of problems?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think one key thing is obviously sort of in the way to like a regional physical world, your face kind of represents you. So you go to talk to someone, you can instantly see who they are. And for quite a while, kind of people have been content with kind of the Facebook and Instagram level of, okay, I see a profile picture that looks like my friend, and the profile's name is my friend's name. But obviously, unlike in the physical world, that could be anyone. It can be a fake boss, and kind of the more reputable you are, the more fake users there are. And there used to be a great tool called blue tick to separate those, but then first Elon destroyed it, and then Mark Zuckerberg followed suit, so now also Instagram blue tick means nothing because you can buy one. And also the cheaters and scammers can buy one. So all of a sudden, kind of, we lost this sort of, like, even the last sense of connectivity between, okay, this is the real user and I trust what they're saying. And that's where Web3 can really come in. So I think blockchain and your wallet content are great ways to have interoperability to start authenticating yourself. Because it wasn't the perfect solution for Twitter either, where you probably ended up bribing a Twitter employee to get a blue tick because it was really hard to get that, especially as an individual. So that wasn't a great solution either, but $8 a month is not great either, so we need something better that kind of connects a virtual persona with a real human, just like your face and your voice connect you. And with deep fakes, even they don't connect you necessarily any other video, for example, so we need a new way to like replace that credibility.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think the biggest problem in traditional, so-called traditional identity is there's no way to verify it. So basically, you provide a credential, like the password with the email or thing. You ask the Facebook server, it's like a magic box, say, am I Suji? And the guy say, hey, yes, you're Suji, you can log in. Or you're not Suji, you go to tap, you're Satoshi. And in the physical world, like when you have the passport, when you have the ID card, the foreign government and the other agency, they can't really verify. That's actually the fact. That's a fact for almost 100 years. They can't verify. They just use some tricks. This looks like the real American passport. It's actually not. So you again, you have the magic box. You put something in, and they might tell you so. The first cryptography identity is dated back to the 90s when we had the PGP, And the problem is that it's so nerdy, no one really use it, and it ends up, like it's only people who are doing sketchy thing online are using it. Right? So that's a problem. Like people say, hey, good people don't need this kind of thing, and if you are like a normal guy, you actually have to trust the black box, the magic box. I think that the idea today is definitely not really. That's the first time we can have some fun stuff. Like your PFP. Because PFP is somehow like your public key. You can have some fun stuff. And you can have some fun stuff with your cultural identity. They identify yourself as a punk, so you got a punk, and they also link to your public key and link to your, on-chain banks, right? So it has some cultural meaning and eventually bonded to your identity. It's really similar to how the nation state is evolved today. Because we have a land, it's not called Europe or Asia, and there's different names with different language. And like, we don't like look alike. So we name ourselves on different nation, and then eventually become a nation state. I think it's pretty much the same thing, like, oh, the punk people and the A people are different. They have different groups. Eventually it will become like small city state. Maybe city state can issue those IDs. It's pretty much the same thing, like a small city like Laos. We all have like 40K cylinder, and a large NFT group may have larger and was stated in Europe and then out, right? So that's a very interesting thing we have today. And in the past, we don't really have such opportunity. We have to either trust that boss or become super negative. Now we have a way to groups and really kind of blend in and actually make some difference. That's my
Let me flip the question for Miguel and Richard, because I think you guys did a good job of establishing the importance of being able to verify humanity online. So then I think the other side of that is privacy concerns, because to verify yourself, you do have to put some data out there. So how do we approach the privacy concerns? Considering that blockchains, so far the trend has been putting data, making more data public rather than last year. That's going to change in the future, and how are you guys approaching that?
Yeah, I was actually going to say one of these like things that people don't really expect from Web3 coming from Web2 is just like, I don't know, if like Facebook asks you for your phone number and you get into Facebook, sure they have it now, but like not everyone on Facebook can see that. And like in Web3 specifically, if you go from in the open and with blockchains, whatever information that you're putting out there for literally everyone to know. And I feel like people don't really see that. I think it seems like we have agreed that like the best way to deal with that is first of all to try to share as little as possible, and also to build systems like Orion ID or we're looking at WorldCoin that using simulation which can let you at some point, like for example, prove that you're older than 18 years old or 21 without actually like revealing all of your data. And so just like allowing to give your data to a trusted party or someone like them actually like attest and have this attestation from trusted parties serve as a way to prove that you are somebody, like maybe you are human or you are older than 21 or you have a university degree without actually revealing all the public information about you. Seems like we're still like fully figuring that out, but I would personally bet like zero-knowledge proofs and all of like security infrastructure as the way to do that, because I mean we still want all of the code to be in the open, and we still want it to be decentralized, and we still want it to be verifiable. And there's like this issue with like things are either private or verifiable, and we haven't really found a way to do both, because if it's verifiable, then you need the information to verify it and to check it yourself, and then you're like making everything public. And so yeah, it seems like the best way so far is to have some trust and to have some attestations that everyone else can verify, and we'll see how it goes from there.
So first off, I have to confess to being one of those persons who paid for a blue tick. I was mainly curious what would happen if I paid for a blue tick and what came with the service. And so Richard Muirhead is back, but maybe I'm not Richard Muirhead in the first place, because we haven't got anything connecting me with that blue tick with anything else. So I'll try and answer your first question and your second question, Brad. So the way we think about how to thought about this at Fabric is that, back in the day, the Olympic day I'm talking about, we had, the village model. We could trust each other. We had a form of privacy that worked for us, and that we didn't care about it, or we took behind sort of closed walls, whatever. And waves of technology, have been employed to try and scale it to the city-state. I think capitalism is the technology there to scale it around the world. And arguably, it kind of works using obviously trusted intermediaries. But now with the advent of Web3, where we don't just want to have trust extend sort of through third parties to the world. We want to have many different sub-communities within which you can operate trustlessly and also interoperate between them. This is many orders of magnitude too great for any kind of third-party-based trust model to work. And that's not just about the rent that any third-party trust model will likely take out of it. And it's not just about the fact that people who have the third-party power might well become corrupt, although we should watch out for that. It's also because it stifles the rate of innovation. If you have to go through a third party, you've got an enormous amount of brittleness in the way you construct your modes of communication and business and society. You need much more adaptability. So I think it's like fundamentally superior to move to the trustless model that we have within Web3. And so we look to move away from the fun stuff involving PFPs per se. We look critically in the areas of finance, obviously, know your customer, anti-money laundering. If you solve that problem, that would be a boon to so many people. We're driving financial inclusivity, would stop us paying money to third parties who are just spending their time checking, passports that they can facilitate to the world. And the other area is health. If we're going to move to a level where we can pool the world's collective health data, and you know that an image scanned on one particular occasion of a certain organ has been analyzed by either an algorithm or a person you can identify, so you can rely upon that for the purposes of the research or your diagnosis, you're going to need to be able to identify it. So those are the areas that excite me. And I think, on this final point maybe about having an intermediate, I think we're looking at some of these. It's okay maybe to try some third-party trust models as we try and build this out for Web3, but I really think it's going to be much better if we keep away from those. We have networks that are networks that we can trust, that to which they can attest to our identity. So we interact with them, and then they interact with another community, and so on and so forth. That's where I think innovation lies, and I think it's possible. It'd be great if WorldCoin could go in that direction as well.
I want to ask about algorithms, because I think one thing we hear a lot about in terms of the promise of decentralized ideas is that you'll be able to take your social graph with you. You won't be locked into one app, one community. You'll be able to switch experiences and take your connections with you, or not lose your connections. But then another aspect is the algorithm is determining which content you see. I mean, that can have a huge impact on your life. It can literally determine who your closest friends become. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on not just optimizing or freeing our social graphs, but optimizing algorithms for our well-being rather than for the company's well-being. Is that, do you see potential for that by decentralizing our social connections?
Yeah, I think overall kind of the ranking of content is a huge challenge. However way you look at it, kind of what's the right amount of censorship? If we already know that 0 is not the right answer for that either. There's spam, there's illegal content, there's like stuff that you need to get out of there. There's just no way around that. Every government has certain limitations wherever you go. And then beyond that, obviously, how do you rank things? The problem with the algos, so for example, Instagrams and Twitters and TikToks, is that the primary optimization is always for maximizing the amount of ad impressions you serve. It's not for users' benefit, it's not for most relevant, most interesting content, it's for maximizing the time you spend scrolling through the feed, so they make more money by serving ads. And that's the only way you can access, for example, Twitter now, since they block the APIs. But in Web3, kind of the first thing we did when we started Phaver was we partnered with Lens Protocol to keep out the control of the social graph. So from day one, we're building knowing that our users can, if our algos and our rankings and our censorship are not good for them, they can go elsewhere. And that's, I think, kind of the only way to make sure that like the companies building on top of those graphs have to keep the users in mind. So if we don't censor enough, people go elsewhere because it's mostly spam and scams. If we censor too much, they go elsewhere. If we have an algo that's purely optimized for monetization, again, somebody's going to have a better algo. So our incentives are then to figure out what's best for the user, otherwise somebody else will figure it out if we don't have the lock-in. And I think that's gonna not only supercharge the innovation, but it's also gonna be kind of bringing a lot more sort of like ethics and sort of like concern for the user into it. Is anybody else can do a more user-friendly algo at any given point, and you can lose your users. So I think it's gonna be a hard task, but if that's the kind of step one, then everybody building on Lens and CyberConnect with Parcaster will sort of be obligated to do better than the way few ones have done.
All right, last question. It's a quick one. It's a question I love. All right, not even the last question. That's it. Give our panelists a hands. All right, welcome, you guys. Onboarding the next million. It might become billion, but onboarding the next million, so we're not making quite that big. Let's go down the line and get some introductions.
Hi everyone, I'm Lauren. I'm from the developer experience team at Invest Conferences. I'm super excited to be here.
My name's Rick, and I've been pushing wallets up a hill for a while and still trying.
Okay, thanks for having me. So this is Gigi from Huobi Ventures.
I'm Jun. I manage the Korean market for Ledger.
Richard from Fabric again. I'm part of some kind of Brad Richard panel sandwich going on here, so like we could jump in.
All right, first question, maybe unnecessarily aggressive, but after years of development, why is the wallet experience still so clunky?
So I'll take this question. So definitely the UX problem is an issue. So previously, before this introduction of account extraction, everyone has to remember all the like secrets and learn about the entire crypto ecosystem, like soft storage, cold storage, hardware, software wallet to actually access to different DeFi apps. And this is definitely difficult for an average non-crypto native users to actually understand and have incentives to learn about the entire ecosystem. And also, the people have to rely on different EOA accounts to actually sign in into different DeFi platforms. And this is definitely difficult for the people to streamline the process. So we definitely need some sort of improvements after the account extraction introduction into the space.
Sure, I'd love to just show one area that we've improved, we released. And you can see here that we've removed the need for Wallet Connect. Now, I don't know, how many people here have used Wallet Connect? Okay, and how many people here have had a problem getting their wallet to connect to Wallet Connect? Right, and I'm sorry about that. Like, I helped get Wallet Connect started, and we did our best, but it isn't the best system. And then Apple came out with this ability to extend Safari, and we released a wallet yesterday actually that makes use of this. So this is one side of the friction, which is interacting with dApps on your phone, and then the other side that I spent a lot of time on is on hardware wallets. And this is an alternative to Ledger. I'm a huge fan of what Ledger's achieved as a company. But one of the areas that I struggle with Ledger is that I need a desktop computer to update many of the parts of it. And this is mobile first from the beginning. And so what I would say is that I think that wallet companies have done their best within the constraints of the technology that we're allowed. There are new advances and extensions, there are new kinds of hardware teams popping up, and with things like group wallets from Safe and Gnosis, and then of course the move to account abstraction, we're making some big moves. But the one thing I would step back in is question the question here. If you've ever sent a wire transfer internationally, it's 27 pieces of information. So at least on just sending money, we've got a better user experience, like objectively. I think there's work to do, but it always is. I'll keep going.
Since I now know how many of us have issues with Wallet Connect, I'll just shameless plug MetaMask SDK, bringing the functionality of our wallet into JavaScript projects, Unity, soon to be Unreal Engine. Yeah, but I think with clumsiness, we're making progress in the right direction. If anybody remembers, like 2016 wallet experience, we've made some, but we can only move as fast as like the feedback that we're getting, right? We need to know where are the struggles coming from, what are the actual problems that need to be solved, and then we can begin to integrate those solutions.
How about you guys, Jim? Richard?
If I say that Ledger has a, provides clunky experience, I think the PR team will give me. Ledger, we actually strive to provide as much great user experience as much as possible without sacrificing any of the security. So we are a security-first company. We mentioned, he mentioned that you need a computer to update the device. You actually can use your Ledger PanelX, not to your mobile phone, and update from there. So you don't actually need to be sitting on your desk to update as well. So these are improvements that we're making. And, we came up with Ledger Stacks that is really a next generation hardware wallet where the focus is really delivering that user experience that people haven't experienced before with the e-ink display. And it makes a lot of fashion statement as well when you actually place it down on your phone and people can actually see what kind of NFT you're holding. So it's not just a hardware wallet, but it's also kind of lifestyle, fashion accessory as well. So it blends in with your everyday life.
I'm looking forward to having my first Ledger Stacks. I need to be able to flex some more. First of all, we are Ledger investors. We're also consensus investors. I also downloaded Dawn in the last day. I've been checking it out. We also backed Argent, and we also backed Mir, who have had account extraction for a couple of years now, and moving towards other kind of extensions to that. But I think, one thing that you said before, but maybe I'll pick up on Rick's question to the questioner. I think it's true. The current systems for doing international wire transfers can be totally abysmal. Utterly abysmal. Confusing and horrendous, and they might fail. The problem with Web3 is that the hurdle is slightly different because the trust model is different. People are educated and people tend to perhaps initially trust banks, but ultimately it will kind of like sort itself out and the money will get there or they won't lose it or whatever, so they kind of will persist. So the hurdle is high for us in the industry to get it right. And whilst, of course, you still have to even think about the concept of gas, or when not paying for some fees, or choosing which network you're interacting with, or you can't just automatically have some kind of sophisticated social recovery, or you find yourself kind of re-authenticating because you're involved in some more complex blockchain application. It's not good enough. And in fact, we should pat ourselves on the back that we made the progress we have with those complexities. For a lot of people, but I think if we, a lot of us are in it, maybe are indulging in our own sort of nootropics to think that we don't have to make sort of big steps forward, or Gatorade or whatever that we're high on if we don't have to make big steps forward to get to the next. Let's forget million. I think that's kind of like under-promising and over-delivering. We might be able to get the next million on by the end of the panel or the evening at least, but it's definitely about the next million the next couple of years.
Question for Lauren. MetaMask, it's almost one of those brands that's synonymous with the product at this point. So how has MetaMask established such a large market share, and how do you plan to maintain that market share? And just as a warning, I'm going to ask Rick next how he plans to take that market share.
Absolutely. So I think the first mover advantage, it definitely didn't hurt us.
If you look at accessibility and our approach to accessibility, with the Chrome extension on one and then mobile on the other, these are already places where people are familiar, they know how to get started. So then you make your account and it's all very simple. And so even if you're brand new to Web3, making a MetaMask wallet, like you're making your account rather, it's not a challenge. It's not super scary the way a lot of onboarding in the Web3 can be. The way we plan to maintain this, it's really just looking forward toward increasing security, increasing the user experience, and then reaching the audience that are still a little bit hesitant.
Rick, what do you think?
No, I think everyone has to give credit to MetaMask for innovating the model of bringing a wallet into a browser. I think that one of the things that everybody in technology suffers from is this thing I refer to as almost desktop blindness. Because we can all afford a laptop and we can all afford some form of desktop computer. We live with mobile phones, but we actually don't live on mobile phones. And so a huge amount of time I've been spending is like, what is it like to live kind of entirely on an Android or even a Huawei device? I don't know how many of you have heard of the Petal Store, but this is Huawei's fork of the Google Play Store that allows them to kind of distribute apps into Asia and Africa. And so I'm much less interested in trying to denigrate the incredible work of the MetaMask team, like all the progress they've made and the hundreds of billions of dollars of assets they secured. And much more like, because Dawn is microscopic and new and early, we can experiment with these new opportunities and perhaps chart like new waters. And we want other wallets to integrate Safari because Apple loves it. They approved our wallet in 2 days, no issue. We want people to explore what's possible on Android. But the area that I would maybe push back on the industry on is this use of React Native. So if you're not familiar, it's this write once in JavaScript and ruin your app everywhere it's deployed. And it leads to apps that are highly non-performant. They don't go with the grain of a platform. And particularly on Android, they just crash all the time. And so I think raising our kind of quality bar for high trust, extremely well executed native applications, that should be the minimum. And another wallet that I'll highlight that's about to launch is called Family, and that's phenomenal user interface and animation design. So I think ultimately wallets are like love songs. Lots of people are going to keep building them and a way of kind of expressing yourselves. And just like browsers, it's such an interesting area that we're going to see massive amounts of innovation.
Similar question for Jun. You guys dominate the hardware wallet space. How do you plan to maintain that dominance?
We keep saying that people don't call hardware wallets anymore. They just call it ledger because we have such a dominance in the market. This is actually one of the reasons why Ledger's next came out with such design is that we want to grow the market. Right? Those design actually appeal to a lot of general audiences, and we are educating a lot of people, outside of the space as well, on why they need self-sovereignty in Web3, in crypto, why they need self-custody. This is to really educate the general audience and get them onboarded and increase really the whole market itself. So that's what we're focusing on right now.
For Gigi and Richard, as investors, what do you think the next evolution of wallets is? What are you looking for in potential investments?
So definitely the improvements in the user experience will be something that we're looking at. So we have been looking at quite a lot of the wallet or account extraction kind of projects that can leverage on the latest EIP 4337 updates in terms of market standard. So definitely we can see, say like Origins or wallets, that they are trying to leverage on the latest update to improve the entire user experience in the wallet. And we hope to see more people will be on board to Web3 after incorporating these account abstractions tooling in the space.
So I think we're still at a stage where innovation taking place in the wallet level. So I think it can still be a great investment. I mean, we've asked the questions, so I'll focus on that. But I actually like Rick's metaphor with songs. I think the way wallets will go, well, first of all, we need to get to a point in the future where you can be custodying your own assets and data and so forth. So we'd be much more sophisticated in the way in which working wallets work. And at the same time, obviously, have privacy preservation. So kind of the cross between ZK and 4337 is got to be the direction to go, especially with the promise of having a kind of decentralized, relay network. That means there's no third-party trust model involved at all in a kind of abstraction. So I think that all is like a new wave. If I said on actually another discussion in Paris that we might even have a kind of account abstraction summer ahead of us, like we had a DeFi summer. I think it can be that kind of little ripple of innovation to push us all forward. But I think, like songs, there's going to be a lot of them, and like songs, some will be hits, and sort of back end, but there'll be a lot of them, and they'll be to suit lots of different purposes and situations, and that's going to require real work and creativity. So I'm not kind of sort of denigrating the amount of work and creativity involved in doing that. But some will be hits, but that doesn't necessarily make wallets therefore great investments for an investor. But the extremely essential components of the ecosystem that need to work, phenomenally well. But there's going to be, thousands of millions of different types, literally, as well as billions, trillions, as well as per second. That's how I view it.
Speaking of account abstraction, and a lot of you mentioned user experience, and I think to improve the user experience, it is going to be necessary to abstract away a lot of things we're doing manually now. But it seems like abstracting things away means making choices on behalf of the user. So is it possible to make things easier to use or more convenient without sacrificing trustlessness?
Yeah, so definitely I think the upgrade in the VIP standard could help. So previously it's hard for the general users to enjoy the CFI experience while sacrificing the DeFi security. And currently with the account restriction upgrades on the VIP standard, they can definitely doing that while, for example, like the HOD is not contract accurate or representing the wallets. And then basically the wallets can be signed with the smart contract directly without inputting all the seed phrase and signing on different kinds of the EON accounts. And this can definitely do the realizations and maintaining both the security as well as the user experience and convenience.
I think one interesting example is seeing how Lens has this bundler, so you don't have to sign a transaction every single time you're posting on Lens protocol. But another way I like to think about it is less in terms of what tech we can apply to wallets to move wallets forward in some kind of literally abstract way, but like, what is the minimum number of taps somebody has to go through to have a magical experience with any of this technology? When do they have a moment where they think, I want to be part of this? That's either like joining a community through an NFT they own, or sending money to a friend that would have been difficult to send otherwise, or getting access to some kind of financial instrument that wouldn't have any. And whatever we can do to reduce that number of taps, I think increases the excitement something has around the product. I mean, everybody's had this experience with ChatGPT where you tap out a sentence, hit enter, and magic starts happening. And that's probably as few taps as you can have to have a truly extraordinary and magical software experience. That's like the pinnacle so far, honestly, in terms of my personal usage. But that's like one lens in which I look at it through.
I completely agree. If the goal here is to remove as much of the barrier to entry as possible, then we can look at, say, the power of using gas abstraction in gaming, which is historically Web 2 dominated field. So by abstracting away like some of these pieces that kind of make it a little more nerve-wracking to onboard, it's facilitating onboarding in a way that we haven't yet seen.
I think I like. I'll try and avoid the kind of the references to the particular lens I might be taking here, because all the puns were unintended. But I like building on Rick's point apparently. Again, taking it further, I don't think it's about reducing the number of taps. It's about having no taps. I think that's where we should hold the bar. Something that we talk about DeFi, I've talked about it. DeFi shouldn't be DeFi. It's slightly different case, but it should be zero DeFi. So we should be going about our business, and the finance that we need, the insurance we need, the credit we leverage should be provided to us because we're comfortable enough with the system we're incorporating with or interacting with, all the information is there, and it just happens. And so I think that bar of kind of zero taps is kind of where we want to get to. So it's a pretty high bar. And I think that's going to have to be coupled with, that's only going to happen if we don't just trust, comfortable with the usability. Not only can we trust the level of privacy that they get within these systems, which is crucial for the next billion, but also obviously the business model. And so, this next wave of dApps, they will be intrinsically social. Our identities are the center of them. And it was touched upon on the previous panel, but I think it's relevant here to the next million or billion. The power of this next wave has got to be that it has a pluggable architecture, if you want to kind of use that kind of quasi-technical framing for the business model, for the token economics. Now that we've got the ad revenue taken away, people can be really innovative about creating incentive structures that are benign for the communities that they're serving. And so if you get all of those things right, it's zero tax. You can trust the privacy aspect of things, and you're not the product, and you're not going to be effed over by using it. Then that's not going to have the next billion and have everybody on it. It's going to be a totally different world.
Do you have any thoughts on trustlessness versus convenience?
I believe that everything comes from actually trust. When you mention trustworthiness, it's based on the fact that you actually trust the contract that you're signing on, like for the account instructions as well. So, I'll say it's really focused on the user experience after having a complete trust of the system or the contract that you're signing on.
Here's a question that's right in line with the title of the session. Do you think the next, million or billion are going to come from advances within crypto or events outside crypto? For example, recently a lot of people started looking to Bitcoin again because of the banking crisis rather than like an upgrade or something changed to Bitcoin.
I think it's actually both, especially I'm kind of being safe here, but really it comes from a lot of people's needs to have. I mean, we talk a lot about user experience, but the real reason that why I'm very into Web3 is because we actually need it, right? I guess kind of with self-experience myself. I'm actually a Korean American living in Korea, and as a foreigner, the banking system is terrible for foreigners in Korea, and really to kind of navigate in the financial system, the next financial system, where I need to be in the Web3, I need to use crypto, I need to be financially completely self-control, self-sovereignty in this area. So there's a need for that. I believe that comes either kind of like the exterior demand. Interior demand, I guess you mentioned about user experiences, that user experience will definitely accelerate or lower the entry barriers for a lot of people to get in. I think there's definitely a perceived image of Web3 being very kind of difficult to get into. If we are able to kind of create that image from inside where the users are able to, be moved on into Web3 without, thinking about how technical difficulty it's not anymore, for sure. I think that will definitely increase a lot of
I'll be quick. Get me out of the way. So I think we'd love it to be, the banking crisis that really precipitates the next billion or whatever, and the DeFi kind of, really starts to will it out. I think it's just still super hard because what the banking system is, the government, it's all intertwined. It's a little tricky to unwind. And so, we've been thinking that actually some of the institutions that we weren't waiting for before to get on board, the media institutions might well be the first ones. So we it's a silly phrase, rather than DeFi, it's kind of decull culture, so it's sports, media, entertainment, and that, in those areas they have ready audiences, fan bases, and in a sense, and this is it's so quick, this will become like a thing or whatever, you're seeing Web 2.5 happening, where they're willing to compromise and come towards the kind of Web 3 movement. And I think one of the reasons they're willing to do that, first of all, because they're not regulated in the same way. Secondly, maybe because people like Elon potentially might shake them up or are shaking them up, and their business models in trouble. But thirdly, because they've seen this movie, I'm medical attendant, but they've seen this movie before, because they've seen themselves impacted by the first version of digitalization. They know it's real. Will happen, it'll really change things. So I think that might be where it happens.
Yeah, so definitely we see that going forward, definitely both outside and inside crypto factors can help because of course it based in Hong Kong and previously the regulatory front is super hard for us to fully onboard crypto because they for the fiat and off-ramp or for the trading side there's a lot of restrictions. So going forward, we think that the regulatory or the financial funds could be releasing, especially in the Asian side, it's like in Taiwan, Japan, and Hong Kong, and that too. Probably we have more advanced options. And also within crypto, there's certainly a lot of factors also so say like in the previous quarter, a lot of the crypto demands were driven up really from the financial incentive side. So take example of the DeFi protocols or native protocols, we are basically providing a sustainable growth. But going forward, we see a lot of narratives starting, especially on the hardcore gaming or some sort of social narrative. They are more incorporated into the actual real life of the people, and they can be incorporated into their daily life. And definitely this kind of financial incentives, say like entertainment or leisure kind of incentive will be helpful in bringing more users into the entire crypto ecosystem.
I also think we have to acknowledge how much we've shrunk the industry in the last 2 years. I mean, millions and millions of people have had the user experience of losing money or losing access to their money. And that is about as terrible as user experience as you can have with software as you can possibly conceive. So we have to acknowledge that between Celsius and FTX and these massive blow-ups, that we failed like the general public. And we pissed off Apple. We pissed off many of the platform providers, and I think that we've gone from maybe the whole ecosystem being a credit to society to actually being in debt, and that's not good. And it's like from those ashes that you've got to kind of honestly say, what are we offering people? Well, one of the areas I think a lot of people are starting to feel uneasy about is how little they actually own digitally. So you don't own your phone number really. If you stop paying, it gets deleted. Your email's hosted by another provider. Everybody's got a friend of a friend who's been removed from a social network for a while. It's not like a niche thing anymore. There's this sense that all of the work you put into your online life is not yours to own, and that it's kind of paid for in some way or linked to some subscription or linked to some other company. And I do think but over time, having better and better stories on how people could control, and perhaps that would only be possible if there was a neutral base layer. But that creates, opportunities to bring people in and they'll feel like some sense of control, particularly over digital cultural objects. But yeah, I do think we also need to concede just how many people feel burned by crypto, and burned by us not calling out these obvious kind of hurtful human beings. I think one heuristic we should have is if somebody makes $1 billion and is blabbing about it too quickly, we can just all say that that's like not very culturally sensitive to any part of the mission. We should call those people out because otherwise they will keep scamming regular people and this industry will contract.
Absolutely. I think we've done a rather poor job as an industry of controlling the narrative, which is ultimately our responsibility, to remind people that there are bad actors. It doesn't make it bad technology or, anything like this. So taking back that control is going to happen internally, and that's sort of like the next step. It's a requirement, really, for onboarding the next 10, let alone billion people.
All right, we're almost out of time. But I guess I'll keep going until we get kicked off. This is a question I like. What's an unpopular opinion you have about crypto? Something that is not widely shared by those around you. For example, a sector that is popular but you think is overhyped. What are your hot takes?
So Akiko first. So personally, I think the combination of AI and crypto may be a little bit overhyped because we know the development of the entire audio could take a lot more time and the resources and time that needs to be taken very much longer. And we see the majority of the current AI mixed crypto kind of projects is still very much lack of actual use case. So definitely I personally think this is relevant.
Yeah, I think the move to private token sales, but sales back enormously. And shoving basically all seed round deals into private simple agreement for future tokens has been so anathema to the original genesis of Ethereum. People fail to understand about Ethereum compared to other protocols. Because I think it made like 100,000 people $100,000. And that's a really special thing. A lot of people were able to get in early, and every 3-year period, if you held ETH, you did well. And that created this amazing distributed set of people who were benefiting from the ecosystem. And then because of the Filecoin staff and this movement of funds and all the fear of regulation, all of I got shoved back into private deals, email threads, DocuSign. I'm party to all this stuff, and it just makes me feel uncomfortable. Where, VCs are saying, we're not sure about the regulation on the way in, but as soon as there's a token ready to be dumped, they're pretty sure about their regulatory position. And so I think that if we can find tasteful ways to push back against regulatory frameworks and allow regular people to participate again at earlier stages, and if founders can absorb themselves of the greed that can tempt them, and can think about longer term investing for their projects, but we can step back into a path that it's not already laid down for founders, which is try and start the lowest possible valuation, smallest amount of capital you need to get going, and spin up flywheel from there. Because if you enrich your community, they'll stick around. Whereas if you destroy your community by dumping on them, it's pretty terrible. And I know that I've been involved with things that haven't got this quite right, but I've always tried to at least be open about it, and I've certainly been the one losing. But I still think it's better to allow people to experiment in the open and have wins and losses than to continue to have this kind of private financing, public dumping, which is just endemic to the ecosystem now. So that's how I feel, and it obviously makes a lot of people upset when I say that.
I think it doesn't make me upset. I think I could not agree more. I think that, well, first of all, say this. Maybe this is unpopular. We haven't got any use cases yet. So it's not a question of thinking that some are overblown. We have not got them. But that's okay, because what we've been doing is incredibly complicated. It's like, an entire new computing stack. It's an entire new way of funding communities. It's an entire new way of governing communities. And so what is going to happen, I would predict, is that we will find some of those use cases will emerge. Some actual proper games that work, or some actual, pooling of health data that works, or, some of the use cases that takes off. And then I would predict that all of the stuff around the Ethereum, fair launch and even some aspects of ICOs and token launches and so forth, all of that learning, the goodness will come together, and I think can deliver on a lot of what Rick is saying. I think he's absolutely right. It's like, that is one of the core principles, the inclusivity, the power of including people and being fair to them is one of the absolute core tenets of the whole movement. And getting it wrong, which is going to happen sometimes, it's like giving a party and then running out of food, which I hope we're not doing at the back, there's a lot of people here. It's like, you know, you do have to get it right, otherwise you burn the crowd and the thing flops. But so I think we haven't got a use case yet, but it's okay because it takes time, it's going to come, and then all of that incredible power of community ownership is going to come back, and it's going to be the thing that turbocharges the whole thing.
All right, Jun and Lauren, if you have any, if not, we'll wrap there.
I guess I'm going to say this is my own personal opinion as a like, I do have a gaming background. So when I see your mention of like Web3 gaming, I do tend to have a very high expectations. A lot of businesses and startups see of Web3 gaming is that they think about Web3 first prior to the gaming. As a gamer, for consumers, they are completely focused on the gaming experience first. Yes, and Web3 really comes second only when it's needed. So, you mentioned about we're talking about like crowdfunding and everything. I mean, for Web3 games as well, we've seen a lot of, NFT scene really good because of Web3 gaming as well. And, we saw benefits of that. We also see what happens in the long term when it's not really focused on the gaming experiences. I'm not sure if it's really healthy for the whole ecosystem. As a gamer myself, I would definitely want to see a lot more Web2 games focused purely on the gaming experience first. And then we can create the Web3 ecosystem.
Thanks a lot, guys.
All right, last talk of the night. Thanks so much for coming. I'm Robbie, I lead ETH, the Year Foundation. Really glad to be here. Japan has been so welcoming, and happy to close out the night. So anyway, what sparked this is the government of Japan actually approved a white paper that is making Web3 kind of an industry of choice, and they've done a lot of things to promote growth. So this panel is really going to talk about what's the scene in Japan in Web3? Well, we've got two VCs, IBC from Japan, and Orion in this space. Orion from San Francisco, where he's invested in globally, and including focus on Japan now. And we have two entrepreneurs, Jun and Jeff, who are builders in the Web3 space. So let's do some quick introductions.
Be first. Check. Are you guys hear me?
This one's out of battery. Maybe you want to charge this. Hi, my name is Tokyo Jeff. You guys might know me as Jeff B. Hart. I've been a music producer for 24 years of my life. I produced over 280 artists in my lifetime. Lots of K-pop, lots of J-pop. Any J-pop listeners up in here? I got a few. Thank you so much. Yeah, great. Now I'm happy to be CCO of Collection as well as Weebox. We've been dropping K-pop and J-pop drops. Now we're going hard into manga and anime. Looking forward to this panel. Great to meet you all. Thank you.
Well, we're bringing to life anime characters right on social. Before doing that, I used to do 50 Cent's tweets when he was a top 10 Twitter account in the world. He, because the fans wanted to hear it getting shot 9 times, drug dealing and in the club. Now he was in the office again. So now we have characters that are going out and doing those kind of crazy things live on Twitter and exporting the anime culture all around the world from Japan.
Hey everybody, thanks for having me out. My name's Orion Parrott. I'm with Orange DAO from San Francisco, and we're a DAO of alumni of Y Combinator. And 1,300 of us, we've raised a $50 million venture fund investing in crypto startups around the world. We write a $100,000 check. When you receive an Orange DAO angel check, you don't get access to one angel, you get access to 1,000, a whole community. And we're really excited to be in Japan and visiting and connecting with more amazing founders over here.
Hi. Good evening, everyone. I'm Akiko from IVC, and I think we have an interesting next panel here, but I represent, Japan on this panel. We are probably the most active seed stage VC out of Japan, and we have about 200 Web3 crypto portfolios.
And what's very interesting about our background is we are actually supported by a lot of Japanese corporates, including big game companies like Sega and Bandai, and a few other names you might recognize. And Japan is a very strange market. When the rest of the world is down on crypto, we are up. When SEC is cracking down on crypto, Japanese government just gave license to one of our stablecoin companies here in Japan. So we are, in fact, in this bizarre land. And I'm happy to share some interesting observations that I'm seeing here in the local market with you guys tonight.
Thanks for the intro. So let's kick it off with I think you had a good thread there. Like, what is the scene in Web3 in Japan? What's going on? What's your outlook? We'll start with.
So, what's interesting here is that about 2 years ago, when the rest of the world, and probably most of you, was already discovered Web3 and very actively investing, and during that time, most people in Japan in that space were sleeping. Obviously, there are some early pioneers, and some of them might be here, but I'm talking about the majority of the investors, including the government, they were sleeping. And while they're napping, luckily, they missed Luna, they missed FTX, all the bad things that happen in crypto. Japan missed out on that train. But during that time, not knowing the world was blowing up outside of Japan, Japanese government started developing a new economic policy. And they said, okay, we missed out on Web2 completely. GAFA is controlling all the Web2 properties in Japan, and we have no hope to gain footground there. So we decided, okay, Web3 sounds like a new thing, but maybe Japan still have a good crack at. So somehow, it's kind of miraculous, Japanese government made Web3 a national agenda. And big telcos like NTT decided, oh, we're going to spend $5 billion in the next 5 years in Web3. I still don't know what they're going to spend $5 billion in Web3 next 5 years. But there's actually a very positive environment. And as I mentioned, Japanese government became the first OECD government that issued license for stablecoin companies. And in fact, our portfolio, which co-invested with Circle, is the recipient of that license. So we have a very interesting trend here. So what you will find in Japan, especially if you're from overseas, there's a lot of willingness from the corporate sector especially to work with you. Don't expect them to know a lot. They may not know much about the subject domain as you guys are, but definitely you're willing to listen. So if you have a project of an interesting technology or interesting platform that has relevance to Japanese companies, I think this is the right time to get started with the conversation.
I'll mention just for contrast.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, this is much better. Yeah, much better. So, sorry everybody. So, just for contrast, yeah, in the U.S., I mean, referenced it that there's it's like a crackdown and a lot of fear about what's happening next with regulations. Thank you. And it's remarkable how that the U.S. is going in the wrong direction. So it's very exciting that Japan is becoming much more favorable. When you listen to the government talk about crypto, it's they're saying a lot of positive things. I will bring up, there's a pretty difficult tax rate right now, but I'm really excited to hear what's going to happen next with that. And so I'm optimistic about it just because of, the government really speaking favorably and wanting to correct that. So I think that's really exciting. Whereas, in the US, it's much more like regulating the hell out of everything. And if you're doing anything with crypto, you're gonna become regulated. So that really pushes us in the US to look at Japan or how can we invest over here and be on board the ship that's going in the right direction. So
Yeah, sorry, we're too silly to talk about regulation in our team. This is much more about the culture and adventure. And what we see a lot with the Japanese Web3 scene is a lot of international teams trying to come over and get access to the IP that's so great over here. It's one of the real cultural hubs of the world, and probably the best cultural hub for Web3, the geeks and the freaks like us. So it's, we see that a lot, but then we see a clash between happy IP holders are famous for being very precious about their IP. So it's a very strong clash between composability that people are looking for in Web3 and a pure store of value. And our team really believes in the composability and building new stories that are optimized for these new paradigms, rather than just purely trying to go out and find the next Charizard card for Logan Paul to wear around his neck in his next box.
So how many guys were here last year for like a similar crypto event? Raise your hands. How many people here? Like nobody, right? Three people. Like 3 people were here last year, right? This is how fast Japan is growing right now. We have so many different types of payments. We've got live payments. We've got QR codes. We've not even begin yet. Right now, Japan is on the cusp of a major explosion for Web3. I'm super excited. I'm so happy to have all you guys here. It's going to be a completely different game when you're on here next year. I think there's so many different builders. As you were saying, there's $5 billion here in the industry. We've got great ideas. We want a real place of sincerity, with a really good vision. I think Japan will be the next big territory for Web3 blockchain and NFTs.
Great. So, Kim-san, you've built IBC into this really prominent VC fund in Japan and across globally, actually. But you also host the biggest crypto event in Japan. What advice do you have for an international, either investor or operator, trying to access the Japan market?
So first of all, I'm going to do a little plug for the event. So everyone here, if you're interested in coming to the largest crypto event in Japan, it's going to be happening in Kyoto end of June. So if you can find me or any of my colleagues, we can figure out how to get you over. But what we are seeing is that these kind of events is becoming kind of an interesting breeding ground for new ideas. Right? So Japan event, we are expecting to have about 8,000 people in Kyoto, and some of the projects are trying to do exactly like IP collaboration you guys are talking about. For example, Azuki, we actually helped them to find a very old traditional temple to do an Azuki themed event. And so obviously they got all those Japanese imagery that they use. And now they can have actually cosplay them in one of the traditional temples in Kyoto. The only thing I'm worried about is someone might burn down the historical building, but as long as that doesn't happen, we're going to have fun. But having said that, so to directly answer your question, I think there are Japanese IP collaborations that might be possible. Like, for example, game companies like Sega and Bandai with great IP, they are now entering the crypto space and trying to collaborate with external Web3 projects. But at the same time, there's a lot of sensitivities around IPs in Japan. And even talking to Sega, which is our LP, they told me something very interesting. Like they're actually very scared to mention the word NFT in the same context as, say, Sonic the Hedgehog. Because every time they say that, all the fans in US and Europe will freak out and start sending hate mail. And apparently, it's not just a Japan-specific issue, but there are people out there who actually think NFTs are evil word, and they can actually destroy your IP. However, they said it's less of a concern when they do that in some parts of Asia. People are actually more accepting NFT than they don't actually send hate mail to you just because you mentioned it. So the companies are starting to understand, it's NFTs not always positive for every fan base they have, and they're actually trying to figure out what is the right mix. So when you approach those Japanese IP holders, yes, please do some
use some caution, and because they have been burned before, and you need to understand, different sensitivities. And another interesting thing I've heard from the anime manga community. So I know the Japanese company that owns one of the largest anime fan community globally, with about 20 million monthly users. And they also were trying to bring NFTs, and then almost got the whole site shut down because people are so upset. And again, they're turning the issue as a lot of poor manga fans felt when NFT comes, it has nothing to do with their fandom. It has more to do with speculators coming in and making things unaffordable, or just, things go up and down, and that your actual fans who don't want to sell, end up holding the bag. So they have seen those negative economies that happen because of NFT. So a lot of people in this manga anime community wants to explore, but they're also trying to figure out how to do those things so that, because ultimately they're not interested in them making money with you, but while all their fans losing money. And they want to actually figure out a way to introduce this NFT or any other Web3 technology that ultimately, benefits their fans, not the speculators who comes along and then, reap the reward and go. So I think that's these kind of sensitivities you should develop when you're talking to the IP holders. But I think, Jeff, you probably have more thoughts on this space.
Okay, John.
You and the IP.
Well, I tell me real quick here. Over on the topic of IP, Ben and Jeff are actually exporting Japanese IP or creating IP here, exporting it to the world. So I'm curious, what takeaways do you have, and what are the key learnings that you can share with the audience?
I'm going to let go first. But before that, just talking a little bit about the Japanese industry here. So I actually made this for my company, my team members, because there's a key difference between Japanese NFT and blockchain fans, as well as international investors from the US. So Crypto.com research, main reason to use NFTs, number one reason, we all know that's financial gain, right? Second one, interest in the technology. So we're looking at like 49%, 45%. Most of the people here are spending it. Let's fast forward, let's go to Japan. And it's a really beautiful thing. This is made by the Consumer Affairs of Japan. Very, very official title, right? So number one, 59.4% of the fans here in Japan, why do they collect NFTs? Collection. They want to collect. They want to collect. That's a big, big difference, right? The second one is, yes, there is speculation, financial gain. But after that, it's like number three comes in, it's like, what kind of utility is there amongst these NFTs? Number four, we want to be able to support the creators. These guys get like 7.5% quality. That's a completely different, I think, demographic of people that are collecting and building, actually collecting and supporting the space. Thanks a lot.
That's great. We got to start to wrap up, unfortunately, but why don't we go over this last couple of questions, and we'll get back to Orion as well.
Yeah, so I think with the IP, like a lot of people are looking for that accessibility though. Like it's a very hard culture to get into. I'm half Japanese. I'm not Japanese here. Only in America I'm Japanese. So it's a tough culture to get into it. So it's all about accessibility. It's all about getting people a chance to be closer to their characters. That's a really special thing about the anime culture is that says it's 2D, you'll never be close to it, so it's a very consumer-centric culture of trying to collect what that character has, or just something with them on it. You see it at the conventions, you see the Santa Claus-sized bags and swag that people are carrying around, and that's what I think is really key, is getting that accessibility.
The question for Jeff is on exporting IP to the world.
What do we got?
Oh, thank you. Thanks so much. All right, so talking about talking about bringing Japanese IP internationally, it's a little bit of a process. So I'm going to talk a little bit about. I'm going to do this really maybe 2 minutes. So any anime fans here in the room? Anime.
Everyone's here is there.
Any anime fans here in the room? Okay, great. You should know. I'm gonna go some numbers here. Some numbers for you guys. The global anime market size was valued at US dollars $28 billion. $28 billion in 2022. And it's gonna be racing compoundly growing 10% a year until it hits 60 billion by 2030. So I'm gonna put things in perspective for everybody here. ES collection, we were dropping K-pop and J-pop artist drops. Now we're going fully into manga and official licensed IP, Japanese IP drops. But it has not been an easy process at all. Why? A lot of you guys are here because we want to work with some Japanese friends, we want to work with some Japanese IP, right? I'm going to put things in perspective. So, me personally, I'm romantically attracted to women. So I'm gonna compare the Japanese manga industry, kind of like a really beautiful woman on Instagram with 2.8 billion fans on her Instagram page, as well as $28 billion of her personal work. Now, obviously, what is she going to be interested in to give you the time of day? 4 things. Number 1, storytelling. Number 2, magnifying her brand. Number 3, innovation. Number 4, increase in her business size and her profitability, right? And so what can I do to become attractive to her? Number 1, obviously credibility. She's got 2.88 million followers on Instagram. I don't have a verification mark. We don't have any mutual friends. It's going to be really tough for me to get her attention. So you don't have the type of social credibility or social from what you and your project is building. The next most wonderful thing you can do is obviously everyone here in this room is doing, and that's building off of each other's social capital, right? We collaborate, we build it together. And yeah, a lot of times it falls on deaf ears, but let's do our best. Let's be genuine to have this discussion and create the credibility for ourselves. Number 2, obviously people want to do, the last thing we want to do is be considered a world and internationally everywhere else. Number 2, innovation. So I don't need to go into this in detail, but $30 billion industry already, there's not enough need for them to do a lot of innovation, right? Only more profits that can be made from just increasing the amount of business that they're doing with their existing systems. But that being said, most of their board meetings, most of all this stuff is going to be how do we maximize our profits, how do we maximize our profits. Chances are there's not going to be a lot of people sitting in that room coming up with new innovative strategic ways to build on Web3. This is where all of us come in, right? Like with our credibility, with our charisma, with our great information. Number 3, patience and understanding. Patience and understanding. A lot of people here, it's your first time to Japan, right? Is it our first time here to Japan, some people? Let's do so. Yes, Japan is slow, yes. Japan is slow, but Japan is always on time, right? Am I right? Am I wrong? Yeah. Japan is slow, but Japan is always on time. So Japanese people work, there's a reason why Japanese heritage lasts so long, because we did a really damn long time building it. Which means that it's going to take a really, really long time for us to keep telling that story, for us to keep holding on to that heritage for times to go. So, being American, right, I'm always like, my mindset's like, LFG, let's go, right? And right here, right now, let's go right here, right now. But you got to take into consideration, like, even any of these buildings right here, we've got massive companies with major amounts of employees. To get a premium for anything will take weeks, will take months. To get to the guy that you need to talk to will take forever. Sorry, I want to be mindful of time, but yes, I'm going to drop it again, be credible, be innovative, be patient and understanding, and welcome to Japan. Let's get it done, guys. Thank you.
All right, last questions for Ryan. So Ryan, you've got a global community across Orange Town. You invested in some Japanese founders as well, and you're also looking to invest in Japanese founders in Japan. How are you integrating, the investor network as well as your founder network locally, especially integrating Japanese founders?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. That's a great question, and we're doing so Orange Town right now. Members are just founders of Y Combinator-backed companies, and we're investing in startups around the world. And actually, this is a great opportunity. I don't think this has been shared publicly before, but I will share it here. We are working on making our portfolio of Orange companies into federal DAO members. And that's the next big expansion for us, because we don't have an official relationship with YC, Y Combinator that we all went through. We're not going to stay behind them all the time, right? And so we're really going to YC crypto. And for that, we're bringing all of our founders into the DAO and the membership. So we're very excited about that. And particularly, in Japan, as I've met different investors and discovered the types of DAOs that they're also creating, we're very excited about DAO to DAO partnerships. We're like, okay, D2C, B2B, we're kind of moving that out of the way, and we're thinking D to D. And we're just very excited about the possibilities of DAOs working with DAOs. And I see a lot of innovation here in Japan in that area, so we're super excited about that. So thanks a lot. All right, that concludes our panel. Thanks a lot for the panelists. Thanks for all for coming. I'll hand it off to